Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel. This video was supposed to go out on the channel the day after the season finished, but of course, it's Chelsea. They never give us things in the order in which we think they should be done in. Pochettino left the club, and that's all we've been talking about since that very moment. So, we have got the Chelsea players tier list for the 23-24 season, which of course was managed by none other than Mauricio Pochettino. Chelsea finished the season in 6th place in the Premier League table, only 5 points away from Aston Villa, who supposedly had such an amazing season. Overall, I think it was a great end to the season. I think the season as a whole could have been better. And if we wouldn't have been so up and down and inconsistent, and if we could have found the end of season form a little bit earlier, then we actually probably would have finished in a Champions League place. You convert an awful draw at Sheffield United, an awful draw at home to Burnley, and just one more result, and Chelsea get top 4. It's absolutely mad. So, we've got 4 different tiers here in this video. We've got top class. These are the players I think have been the outstanding performers for us this season. Good season, average, and then disappointing. It's pretty self-explanatory. I would love to know your thoughts on all of the players in the comments down below. We begin with a disappointing season for Reece James. Reece James only played 11 games and was sent off twice, which is not ideal. It's disappointing not only because of the injuries, but when we get to see him play, we have seen moments here where he's the Chelsea captain and pure petulance takes him out of the game. So for that reason, we need a lot more from our captain next year, and Reece goes in to the disappointing category. We move into Levi Colwill, and I would say, considering what I thought this season was going to be for him, I've put him in average, but at the same time, I think it is borderline unfair because he was playing out of position for so many times this season. 32 matches played, got himself a goal and an assist. You'll see the stats in the bottom right corner for all of these players based on their positions. But I think Levi, under the new manager, he's got to have a role as a centre-back. With Thiago Silva now gone, Chalobah probably leaving, there's going to be many more opportunities for Levi Colwill to cement himself as a top Chelsea centre-back. We move into Axel Disasi. Got himself 3 goals in his opening season as a Chelsea player, and was one of those players that, if he wasn't injured, Pochettino was pretty much always going to pick him. 44 matches played, it's very high on the games played for Chelsea this season. Disasi, I think, was more of like, instead of being a consistently good defender, I'd say he was more there for the vibe moments at times, like jumping in the crowd at Crystal Palace. I don't think it was an amazing first season. Scored on his Premier League debut at home to Liverpool, if we can remember that far back, in Pochettino's first game as Chelsea manager in the Premier League. But we need more from Axel Disasi. We move into a player who's had, in my opinion, a disappointing season. Benoit Badiashile played 22 matches for Chelsea, was out injured again for a very large portion of time. And I think it's weird considering how difficult it was when Badiashile was signed for players to be integrated into that team. Chelsea, at many times last season, was struggling to even get the players to look like they were up for it. And I mean the season before last. So for Badiashile to seemingly decline this season is a bit worrying for me, and I think it is why Chelsea will be in the market for at least one centre-back in this transfer window. Moving into Malo Gusto, who goes in to the top class category. For a player who is so young to come in at Chelsea, many people were like, well, if Reece James is fit, then where is Malo Gusto going to play? Is Malo Gusto going to play? The fact that this guy can play left-back and right-back is so young, but yet so competent defensively, and an absolute menace going forward. He's got 9 assists in his first season for Chelsea. I would say that Malo Gusto is up there as one of the best right-backs in the league. And I'm not just talking about for the fact that towards the second half of this season, he was absolutely brilliant. He was. But overall, to do that in your first season, Cole Palmer will obviously get all of the plaudits this year. But what a debut season for Malo Gusto. Chelsea are very lucky that we've got this man at the club. Ben Chilwell, disappointing. Once again, another season ravaged by injuries. But the problem for Chile is the fact that when he's been playing, he's just not been very good either. Marc Cucurella, with Ian Maatsen going out on loan to Borussia Dortmund, Marc Cucurella gets the spot in the second half of the season. And for Chilwell now, he's got to be looking at his future thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get back into this Chelsea team. Because when I do, I can't stay fit, so I'm going to lose my place naturally anyway. And Cucurella, towards the end of this season, has become such an important figure for this Chelsea team. And I guess it all depends for Chilwell on who the manager is that's coming in as to whether or not he wants someone like him or if he wants to stick with Cucurella going into the start of next season. We move into Thiago Silva. Now, this one's a weird one because he's actually 5 minutes away from my house right now. He's on holiday with his wife in Bali. Who'd have bloody thought it? And maybe this isn't as kind as I would like to have been, but I don't want to just be talking out of emotion here. As much as we love Thiago Silva, the send-off at the end of the season was beautiful. It was magnificent, and what a player he's been. There were many times this season where I think it did show his age a little bit. Chelsea were wanting, Pochettino wanted us to be playing front foot defenders, to be able to get that transition going quickly when we win the ball back. And Thiago Silva wasn't at his best, but there were so many times where he still was massive. Even that final game of the season, you're watching him and you're thinking, do you really have to go to Brazil now? He's still got it. What a phenomenal player. And I've put him in the good season category because I'm trying to be as honest with my own reflections as I can be without letting my favourites cloud my judgment. We move into Alfie Gilchrist, who also goes in to the good season category. Came into the Chelsea team at a time where tensions were really high. We were desperate because we had injuries all over the side. Played 17 matches this season for Chelsea. A lot of those were obviously the tail end of games off the bench. But the passion that he showed when he came on, the goal that he scored and the celebration against Everton, I'm going to say it's my favourite celebration of the season. You can see how much it means to him. And also, he's a centre-back, but was often playing as a right-back. And you've got to take these things into consideration. He did a really good job, and he goes into the good season tier. Enzo Fernandez, look, let's not beat around the bush here. Enzo was disappointing, but he played 40 matches this season, 7 goals, 3 assists, and he was playing with a hernia injury for 8 months. It's absolutely mind-blowing how this wasn't dealt with sooner. I think it was Enzo's decision to keep playing because he felt like the team needed him. We did to an extent because injuries absolutely ravaged us all year. And then unfortunately for Enzo, when he actually did come out of the team, Chelsea looked unstoppable. We'll see how we deal with that next season. We move into Moises Caicedo, who goes into the top class category. Bit of a shaky start. There was that dodgy game at West Ham that we all going to remember. And since that point, he was kind of the scapegoat and everybody was ready to fire ammunition at Caicedo because, you remember, he's the £100 million midfielder. Played 48 games for Chelsea this season, nearly 4,000 minutes of football, 4 assists, and that goal that he scored is arguably, I'd say, the best goal of the season. I could also say that Cole Palmer's against Everton, that brilliant goal where Nicholas Jackson gets that assist, that could also be the goal of the season. But Moises Caicedo, towards the end of it, is just showing why Chelsea spent that money on him. And whoever comes in, whoever that manager may be, we have got ourselves an absolute baller in the middle of the park going into next season. We move into Christopher Nkunku. I'm saying average because, look, the man was injured pretty much all season. And we saw that little cameo at the end of the season where he really did look like the player that we wanted him to be. He was the marquee signing. If we look back to last summer, people wouldn't have anticipated, if Nkunku would have been fit, for Cole Palmer to have a bigger goal-scoring impact, bigger assisting impact at Chelsea. But for Christopher Nkunku, I think it's a ticking time bomb. Next season, if the new manager comes in and can fit him in properly, we will get the best out of him and Chelsea will be a completely different side. When you've got a player with that vision, with that understanding of the game, things seem to happen for Nkunku in his mind before it's happened in front of him. Leaves defenders for dead, leaves midfielders for dead. I love the way he shields the ball and I'm looking forward to seeing him next year, but an average season at Chelsea. Cole Palmer. I mean, we've got to talk about this man right now. 25 goals, 15 assists, 45 games played. This guy is absolutely world class. If he doesn't have a role for England and Gareth Southgate in the Euros, then I don't really know what Gareth's been doing all season long. The man is just a magician Whether it's on the right wing where he's played so much football this season, or towards the end of it when Noni Madueke came into form, Cole was playing in the number 10. He was absolutely huge for Chelsea. Single-handedly won us games, got us points out of nowhere, saved us from losing. And I don't honestly think I could have believed it. When we signed him at the end of the transfer window, for the amount of money that we did, 40 million, I was like, it looks to me just like another young player that these new owners have brought in. Here you go, Pochettino. Do your best with him. Fit him in. Started a little bit slow, but blimey. Absolutely. For me, the player of the year, Phil Foden wins it, but look at the players that are playing around him. Palmer's been in a dysfunctional team all season, delivering astronomical numbers. It's phenomenal. What a season for Cole Palmer. We move into Leslie Ugochukwu, again, a player who came in and we're like, we don't really know much about this guy. He's played 15 times, just over 560 minutes this season. Look, I don't think it's disappointing because but he's been injured for the majority of it. And I think when he's played, he's actually looked quite good. I think there's a decent player in there. I just don't know if the new manager's going to really know what to do with him. I think a loan move is necessary next season, but I can't say I'm disappointed with him, because I've not really seen that much of him, and when he's played, I think he's been all right. So he goes into the average category. Carney Chukwuemeka, it's also average. It would have been a good season if he'd have stayed fit, but as it is with so many of these Chelsea players, the reason why they're not higher up the list is because they just couldn't stay fit. And when we talk about that here in this tier list video, and you can see that by the end of it, there's a good balance to this tier list. There's some great players that we've got at this club. And there's also a few that have let us down, but you can see the potential. With Carney Chukwuemeka, I just wonder what would have happened if he wouldn't have got injured in that game against West Ham. The goal that he scored that day was phenomenal. And I think Pochettino really liked him. But after that start that he had to this season, to only play 252 minutes this season for Chelsea, it's disappointing. But what to do? Big season next year for Carney. We move into Raheem Sterling, who also occupies the average category here for us. 10 goals, 8 assists. It's actually pretty good numbers, to be fair. 43 matches played, but look, as much as the end of the season was good, and Sterling was excellent in those last couple of games of the season. In fact, no, he wasn't excellent, but he took his goals that he scored well. I just think for Chelsea this year, we can't allow the ending of the season to kind of overcloud the other games that we had before it. As I said earlier on, we could have had top 4 this season, but we screwed up on so many levels, on so many different occasions. And when it was looking for leadership, when you're out there and you see Sterling kind of jogging around, he didn't look up for it so many times. And for me, he was one of the most frustrating players to watch at numerous occasions this season, because you just wanted more. When Chelsea looked like they're void of leaders out on the field, you're looking at Raheem Sterling and you're like, bro, please, just put the flipping effort in, pass the ball at this time, and shoot. Like, the decision making in the final third at some points, like, I didn't have hair for a lot of the season. It grew back towards the end of the season. We started winning. It's funny that. But there were times where if I did have hair on my head, I'd have literally been yanking him out watching Raheem Sterling play. I'd say maybe he could have gone into good season because it's not a dreadful return in all competitions, but he's staying in average because you'd expect more from a senior player. We move into Mudryk. The reality is with Mudryk, he's been disappointing. You thought maybe there were times where you wanted him to kick on, and then it wasn't really his fault because he'd have a good game, he'd score a goal, and then Pochettino would take him out for the next game and put Sterling in instead of him. So I don't necessarily think it's all Mudryk's fault that he has been that disappointing. 7 goals, 2 assists, over 2,000 minutes played with 41 appearances total. But for Mudryk, you just expect so much more. You've got those moments, those flashes of brilliance that we saw to get us past Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. It's a wonderful goal. It's a solo goal, rounds the goalkeeper, puts it in. There's definitely a player there with ability. Look, my personal opinion, I'm not saying he's the man that I want, but I do think De Zerbi might become the Chelsea manager. And for whatever reason, with all the things he said about Mudryk, I think it would just light a spark in Mudryk and he'll suddenly become the player that we all believed he was going to be when we bought him. But it's a disappointing season for the Ukrainian. We move into Nicholas Jackson. It's not been top class, because if Nicholas Jackson was a better finisher, we might have even been in the top 3. And that sounds a bit ridiculous, but the amount of chances that Nicholas Jackson missed was outrageous. But in terms of an all-round game, scored more goals than Didier Drogba did in his first season. 17 goals, 6 assists, basically asked to lead the line by himself. At the age that he is, it's a great season, really, for Nicholas Jackson. I think the return is fantastic. The work that he does off the ball, I think, is absolutely brilliant. The runs into the channels, really, really good. Dribbling. I think he's got a better dribble percentage than any other striker in the Premier League for successful dribbles. I think he's been good. And to be fair, I'm excited for him next season. Whoever the manager may be, if Chelsea bring in a striker to alleviate some of that, you must score this, you must score. And his finishing's improved. Let's not take it away from him. Towards the end of this season, Nicholas Jackson's been scoring more, finishing a higher percentage of his chances. Good season for Nicholas Jackson, and a good season for Noni Madueke. 34 total appearances, a lot of those coming off the bench. 8 goals, 3 assists, and I would say he was just as important in Chelsea's late season resurgence as any other player. When he was isolating those fullbacks on that right-hand side, running at players, driving at players, having the confidence. There are a couple of moments where you're looking at him like the penalty situation and you're just like, bro, what are you doing? And I think there was also a lot of nurturing that was needed to be done off the pitch and behind the scenes by Pochettino. You can see that Madueke was one of the players that was obviously gutted that Poch was leaving, as were many Chelsea players. But I think Noni Madueke, overall, I think the last 5-6 games of the season have surged him up this list for me. I would have said disappointing, but towards the end, he was playing really, really good football. We move into Sanchez, and to be fair, I've put him in average, but I want to put him in disappointing, really, because 5 clean sheets in 21 matches, was brought in to be the Chelsea #1 goalkeeper. The reality of the situation is this guy is not a #1 goalkeeper for Chelsea. He wasn't even a #1 goalkeeper for Brighton. Petrovic has come in, taken the mantle as the #1. And I think for Sanchez, you've got to be disappointed. For whatever reason, Chelsea have brought him in thinking he's a top keeper, and he's just not a top keeper. I think he's a good keeper, an average keeper. That is why he is in the yellow category. Petrovic, on the other hand, I'm going to say, has had a good season. And I think Pochettino said it himself. To think that he came from the MLS, the step up to the Premier League, let alone a club of the magnitude and stature of Chelsea, it's a massive step up for Petrovic. And I think he's done a really good job. Towards the end of the season, he looks more comfortable on the ball. He's more competent, playing out from the back. And he's a good shot stopper. Has saved us on many occasions. I also think a lot of the goals he's conceded, you can't really look at him as the fault behind them. Not saying he's faultless. He has had a good season, though, and he goes up the top there. Cucurella is another player that if you'd have asked me this about 2 months ago, I'd have been like, very disappointing, even sell the bloke. Now, he's even got a song that everyone's singing every game. He's been fantastic. And it was Pochettino moving him into that inverted fullback role that has absolutely changed my opinion on Marc Cucurella. I think his football intelligence is good. He's looked a lot more solid defensively, not perfect. But going forward, he's also become a menace. And he's helping Chelsea dictate the midfield, control the tempo. And overall, it's been a good season. You can see here that we're still looking like we've got more players in the average and the disappointing category. But Trevor Chalobah is going to change that as we stick him in the top class category. Look, I have said it in almost every single video that I have made that I do not want Chelsea to sell this guy. And I wouldn't be surprised if the reason that Pochettino is no longer the Chelsea manager is because Gallagher and Chalobah were 2 players that he did not want to be sold. You can see here Gallagher as well. He's played 50 matches for Chelsea this season, over 4,000 minutes. His pass success rate, 91%. I think it is the defensive actions in the final third. He's in the top 3% of players in Europe. He's been absolutely brilliant this season, Conor Gallagher. 7 goals, 9 assists. And he was, in my opinion, the most important player for Mauricio Pochettino. He was always called upon all season long. And in terms of that role that he had, he was being asked to do so many different things. I think he looked so much more comfortable also towards the end of the season when Enzo wasn't in the team. But when you look at this list here, Gallagher, Chalobah, Silva, these guys are pretty much destined to not be at the club next season, which would leave us with Gusto, Caicedo, Palmer, Gilchrist, Jackson, Madueke, Petrovic, Cucurella. Like, based on this, we're going to need so many of the players that are currently sat there in the disappointing and average category to massively step up their games next season, let alone actually be fit and able to play football. That is also up there as one of the most important things that needs to change. But this is my player tier list for the 23-24 season. Overall, I don't think we can turn our noses up at a final. We should have won it. An FA Cup semi-final that we were absolutely robbed of reaching the final due to some awful officiating. And then 6th in the Premier League. It's not a bad season. It's certainly not great. It's not the standards that we expect at Chelsea, no. But it's not a bad season. And when you look at these players here, I'm worried. Chalobah's not going to be there. Gallagher's not going to be there. And look, I didn't want to just put them in that top tier to make a point. But they genuinely have been great. They've been fantastic. Let me know your thoughts on this tier list in the comments down below. Thanks for all the love and support on all the videos. Subscribe if you are new. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you in the next one.